Welcome to the SchlauBurger Show. Hi, and welcome to this new episode of the SchlauBurger Show. Today with a new format, The Clash. Two experts will controversially discuss a topic of high interest, and the one that we cover today is often a very emotional one: alternative transportation. For sure, we will talk about cars, so e-vehicles, but not only that, we will talk about other alternative ways of transportation. And we will ask a lot of questions and discuss, for example, like I established fossil combustion engines still more practical in most daily life situations? What can an individual do in terms of sustainability? Does it make a difference? And of course, what will the future look like? This and much more we will discuss right now. But before we start, please welcome our today's panelists. In the one corner, we have John McCoy. He's entrepreneur, he's a naturalist, and deeply passionate around the topic of e-mobility. And he told me already in advance that he built his own motorcycle. And he's as well a visionary. And one fun fact, he was the first guest on the SchlauBurger Show, and he's actually the first and only one who appears for a second time. Hi, John. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me.
And in the other corner, with his rugby shirt on, Sebastian Wagner. He's not only an expert for clean tech technologies, but as well for e-mobility. So this will be a very interesting match here at the SchlauBurger Show, The Clash, Alternative Transportation. John, I would love to start with you. So if we talk about alternative ways of transportation, e-mobility, this is mainly driven from a sustainability point of view. So you are in the US, right? And this whole initiative is affecting us on, I would say, on different levels: private, business, and as well governmental institution level. And what I've seen is that the president, I think he gave out an executive order to make sure that the federal government uses its power to push zero emission vehicles, and it should reach 100% by the end, I think, 2035. How do you see that enforcing this versus, I would call it, natural adaptation? How do you see that from your view in the US?
Yeah, well, the US is pretty split on this particular topic, and probably most topics nowadays. However, the particular camp that I am in is I feel that is generally a horrible abuse of power and taxpayer funds. So when I look at government and its roles, I do think that does have a place for some levels of regulation, and I think that different types of programs and or innovations and or ideas that could ultimately shape the future of a society and a species like AI would be another topic that I think would fall under that. There's a lot of great things that come from it, but some obviously potential risks. I think that the role of government here when it comes to the sustainability topic, it has gone too far. And I do not believe that the government should be executing any kind of executive orders around sustainability. I do think there is a place to support entrepreneurialism and ideas through different types of grants and funding, like they've provided with organizations like Tesla is a perfect example. Mm-hmm. But similar to organizations like Tesla, they've built that around a business. They've innovated. They've done some amazing things prior to the government's support and help, and post, and repaid the government, I think in less than half the time that the government had ultimately required, in order to showcase not only their ability to build a viable business, but to then pay the taxpayers back, right, from that perspective. So if the government is going to be a charity or is going to do what it believes to be, and this is the kinds of things that personally scare me, the quote unquote greater good of what it thinks society needs by penalizing businesses, then I think it's an overstep. And I don't think the government has any business in that, doing those kinds of things. So yeah, I strongly disagree with the executive order. I strongly disagree with the pressures that the government has put on not only in the U.S. government but other governments in mandating that automotive manufacturers, for example, are fully electric, within the next 3 to 5 to 10 years. I don't like the government meddling in business that way. And I think if you look at, historical references, when the government has incentivized as opposed to penalized, generally more innovation has occurred, and better innovation has occurred.
Okay.
So that's kind of my general viewpoint.
Sebastian, you are in Germany, like I am, but the EU, so the European Union, has I think it's quite similar ambitious goals for pushing out electric vehicles. I think they said as well 2035 they wanted to have 100% or wanted at least to be climate neutral by 2050 and so on. But in Germany, I think we have around 1 million cars. Don't you think to reach those ambitious goals, and we just heard John, isn't it a good thing to push some of the, I would call laggards, so people that are not driving or riding the innovation wave, to push them sometimes gently a bit harder or sometimes a bit harder into the direction to reach those goals?
Yeah, in the end, I'm completely agree in this direction that Tesla is a good example, and it's only one example doing without subsidies from the state, a positive statement that the business model could work. But on the other hand, and I cannot speak for the US too much, but on the European market and especially in Germany, we have the situation that we have the big automotive companies on the one side and also the utilities companies on the other side, which have monopolistic power, at least when it comes to utilities companies. We speak about the liberalized market, but in the end, the power supply which we are creating here is owned by a handful of bigger players. So we saw a lot of positive signals like Tesla in the past, and also the automotive companies started. That Volkswagen is building its ID series. It's only one example, and also BMW started with a known series of electric cars, and electric cars, like I mentioned, is only one part of the medal. We talk about different forms of mobilities later. So we lost a lot of time, is my opinion, because those companies, and it's also a personal opinion of me, they use the market power just to stay at their own business, because it's a running and profitable business. And in the end, if I would be in their shoes, maybe it's also hard to change something if the money comes in and also the energy prices are higher than before. We have delivery problems of the cars. So in the end, we need a little push also in this direction. If, like in the US, such decisions are the right one, we will see. But we need a little push in this direction, in my opinion,
Yeah. So they will stay mainly in their comfort zone, right? And say it is established. And Tesla, of course, they are very innovative, but they started like from the ground as an electric vehicle company. The others have a history and a legacy of these combustion engines. And of course, it may be harder. So you're saying as well, a gentle push into the direction helps them, like the big ones, to go more into this direction. And I think in the US, like Ford and others, they are now having, I think isn't that the very famous truck, the F-150, that they will do an electric vehicle version? I think I read
they already did, and it's borderline failing. I think so the issue, like the issue is kind of getting back to some of this, in my opinion, right? So, and I don't know everything in Europe, but I was kind of trying to understand some of these things globally based upon some of the, I think Eurostat is an organization that provides different data around the EU in general. So Germany is probably different. But according to Eurostat, 38% of the energy breakdown, it comes from renewables, 23% natural gas, although Russia might have changed some of that. 25% of it was nuclear, only 10% was coal, and then 4% came from other sources. Now, Germany, the government has decided for whatever reason that nuclear is no longer a viable option. So I think the last nuclear power plant was closed like yesterday or sometime even this week, which I personally feel is stupid. And again, another thing that the government shouldn't be meddling in. But if you look at like the F-150 example that you gave, Florian, right? So one of the things that the U.S. government had done, and I think this is 8 years ago, maybe even longer, maybe even closer to 10 years ago, they instituted an additional tax around certain types of vehicles. Okay, so trucks were one of those vehicles. And that tax was an additional premium price that the consumer had to pay because they drove a vehicle that had a higher carbon emission footprint than others. Well, what does that do and who does that penalize? So if you go in reference the kinds of individuals that own trucks and the purpose for why they own those trucks, generally speaking, they're construction workers, they're small business owners, they're farmers, and there's definitely a group of people here in the US. I don't personally own a truck, but I own vehicles that do fall under that same sort of taxation, because they have a larger engine, because they fit a certain purpose. My argument would be the government came in and decided because it's for the greater good, because they think that those vehicles have a higher level of carbon emission than others, are penalizing farmers that are producing ultimately the food that we eat, that are penalizing small to mid-sized business owners and large business owners that are responsible for building out the infrastructure for our countries. Why? Is that a good use of government authority? Could you make the argument it's like cigarettes, though? Let's tax cigarettes, which they do here in the US to make it less affordable. Is it like taxing now? Governments are discussing taxing even more ammunition to make it more difficult for people to purchase ammunition. I personally think that's a slippery slope. I think that, in my view, that's more of a form of fascism than anything else. And I do not believe that the government should be involved in regulating the kinds of vehicles that I drive, whether that's an EV vehicle or a ICE traditional vehicle, and then they have no place. So my argument is all they've really seemed to be able to be doing for quote unquote what they term to be the greater good is create a system and a process by which they penalize the average everyday man and woman who's trying to make a living, at least in America, by taxing us as opposed to providing, which they do also to a certain extent, certain incentives around going a specific direction. So that's that trade-off and that problem, right? Is my food's more expensive, mid to small businesses that can't bear the weight of that additional taxation are struggling now more than ever. COVID made that almost impossible. Mm-hmm. Sorry, I'm going on a rant here. Another situation where the government overstepped and decided that they were going to prohibit people and businesses from running because they believed, which is now turning out to be they were wrong, is the impacts of COVID and overall human health. The market should decide, right? And as a choice based upon multiple choices of consumers is the direction we should go, not the government stepping in.
But in the end, the market choice is really easy. So talking about an electric car, it's by far cheaper to run an electric car. And just imagine, in countries over the world, and I'm extending the scope beyond Europe, think about countries which have a lot of sun, and talk about islands where we deliver at the moment petrol, with tankers just to fill the petrol cars there. They have plenty energy from the sun there, and electric cars give those companies, those countries a huge opportunity for mobility, and in the end, it would also make the costs you are mentioning when it comes to a corporate cost even cheaper in the end. So what I mean, all in all, we do not have too much time in the end to get this energy transition done. And what is clear is that a lot of companies are really not willing to go at that speed we need. So we need this push, and in the end, everybody would be happy because the operational costs also for EVs, yeah, are by far less like a petrol car. Yeah, so in the end, it will be also an economical decision at the moment. We are at the turning point, yeah, that we now have to change our minds, yeah, concerning mobility as a whole. And when it comes to e-mobility, it goes strongly together with also using energy in an own way. So also with an electric car, yeah, from a consumer perspective, you get much more open ways. I'm talking about new technologies like vehicle to grid. You can take the energy from your workplace, you bring it to your cottage on the weekend, and so on. And it will makes it more convenient to everybody. You know, I always say I was in motorsports until I was 20. Yeah, I drive very fast, and also drive very fast with my electric car as well. It's a different way of driving, but in the end, what I mean, yeah, it's in the mindset of the people also to think one step beyond, yeah. And all in all, also, if we say the economic situation and the economic system is the right one, that the price is the only measurable thing which drives decisions of people, it will be also the cheapest thing, yeah, you know, concerning moving to electric vehicles in the future. Yeah.
So what I understand is,
I would debate that. So a couple things you said that make me nervous, that actually scare me a little bit, is you're saying things are better for everyone. I don't know that you can actually say that. And I think better for everyone according to whom? So according to you or the government, again, they think that we should do this because in the end it's better for everyone. But is it? So the reason why the F-150, for example, that's called the Lightning, it's kind of a clever name, is why that's failing, is because if you were to take and this is the case with my e-moto I built, which I love for so many reasons, but it does fulfill a very specific purpose. If you were to take that F-150 as an example, that EV truck, and any EV vehicle for that matter, it doesn't matter,
Yeah.
and use it for its intended purpose. So whether that's Ford or Mercedes or Tesla, and they state that they get 400 miles per charge on that vehicle, the chemistry doesn't work out that way, right? You get 400 miles in perfect conditions, driving on a flat road with no load, with no usage of the, not gas pedal, I guess, but the throttle, right? Like in your driving fast cars. So you're looking at a reduction in day-to-day usage for that vehicle from an energy consumption perspective, 50 to 80% reduction in miles per charge, you could say, versus that perfect ideal scenario. So and there's plenty of videos that showcase this. Anybody can go to YouTube and see when they took their EV truck and they tried to tow something with it, what happened to the overall battery usage. They could barely go 20 miles, right, before they were down half of a charge. So the actual reality of the chemistry and the physics and the consumption and transfer of energy and power to heat and to so on and so forth, it's a massive degradation on those batteries. So no, I don't think it's better for everyone.
Yes,
I think that those are misleading stats, right, when we talk about that. And if you throw in cold weather, like you get there in Germany and like we get here in Colorado, it's even worse.
But I disagree there because statistically, and that's proven, that's not something I claim, the overall Germans, they drive 60 kilometers a day, yeah, having a range of 400 miles, yeah, and having the opportunity to charge at work, for example, or at home, you always have a full tank. That's what I mean. It's a mind shift. It's not a petrol car. Oh, I drive now, I get fast, I have to look for a petrol station. Yeah, that's when we want to have when we say we have really limited resources and we have unlimited resources like the sun, that's a decision everybody needs to take. And to be honest, I drive I extend my 200 miles range when I drive to Italy to go swimming at the Mediterranean region. Yeah. And so I think 99% of the people won't have some disadvantage in the daily life. And that's what I mean. What I mean with it, that everybody can have an advantage out of it using EVs in the end. Yeah. And in the end, it will also be a big instrumental and a big, massive power bank. Yeah, just think everybody switching to an electric vehicle in our region. Yeah, and we do not have sun every day. Yeah, you can store the energy of the sun from a whole economical point of view of a country. It really makes sense, and that's what the numbers say. Yeah, of course. Yeah, the individual stuff that what you say, you go on the highway, you want to get fast, yeah, yeah, I can see that point, yeah, but in the end, we shouldn't be too egoistic in the future, and yeah, we all have to change the mind in this direction. It's our decision if we will succeed or not. Yeah.
Yeah, so how many if you're talking about like the grid, right? And I'll give you an example. So in California, right, they are very on the EV car bandwagon, I would say, right? Very pro, which is great. They've got, I think, probably more stations to charge than most places and those kinds of things. And they've provided a bunch of incentives for people to purchase EV type vehicles.
And you have the California duck curve in the morning. You have sun every day. You have too much power.
And there's sun. Yes, there's a lot of sun. Now, I believe that whenever you solve one problem, usually we create 5 more. So the problem that we're solving by reducing overall carbon emissions from transportation, which I think we can all agree is definitely a challenge and a problem, and generally speaking is, the consumption of energy is the highest pollutant from a carbon emissions perspective than any other industry. So no debate there. But what and how is this affecting everyday people? So California came out with this program for everyone to be driving an EV vehicle. What it ignores is the ability for the everyday person to afford an EV vehicle. So that's another problem that they're creating. The other problem is that their grid cannot handle people charging all their vehicles at the same time. In fact, their energy grid came down multiple times last summer just from standard air conditioning use, let alone EV vehicle charging. And they had to make an announcement literally 2 to 3 days after they made the announcement of everybody should be owning an EV vehicle and you're a horrible human if you aren't, that they had to then tell people, stop charging your EV vehicles, you're bringing the grid down, right? So problem 2. Problem 3, currently there isn't a way for them to store that energy efficiently and effectively, even though they are lucky enough to be placed in a great position from a sun, a usable amount of solar, right? From that perspective, for those particular things, right? So some of these problems that we're creating, we haven't done the due diligence to truly understand the impact to the everyday person. Again, we've got these great ideas and we're starting to go through this process. But don't even get me started on how we're mining cobalt in the Republic of Congo and children literally dying and suffering as a result of that, right? And all of these other things that this push is driving. Small businesses can't keep up, mid-sized businesses can't keep up, people can't afford it, the mileage isn't what we say it is. And we literally have a blood diamond type scenario happening in Africa with respect to mining the materials that are required for EV vehicles.
Let me quickly interrupt. So California, higher adoption, when I hear it, better weather. I'm not an US expert, but Texas has a lot of sun as well.
Texas too, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
So why do you think is it that the adoption of e-vehicles and the problems that come with it? I understand the more impact on the grid, right? So the loading and so on. But why is it better, or kind of the ratio higher there than in Texas? Is it a mindset set thing, or is it really like, are the incentives you talked about, are they better or kind of more
Incentives are greater
attractive?
in California. The penalties are also greater in California. California is kind of like Munich in a way. So to your point about the, the necessity and the requirements of people to drive in the larger cities that exist, right, makes much more economical sense. Like my e-moto, right? I can go 80 miles on a charge, right? With a max speed of 80 miles an hour. It's more of a dirt bike kind of type of a concept. I go to the grocery store with that when it's nice outside. I do my grocery store runs. I ride that to the grocery store. I pick up my food. I throw it in my backpack and I go home, and it's great for that. California is built up more like Europe in many cities. Texas is built out like most American, most Midwestern, Central America, those kinds of things. Plus, you have a lot of cattle farming. You've got a lot of farming in general. You've got a lot of homesteaders, and you've got a very different type of lifestyle that exists, which is great. I love the culture that exists in Texas. I'm originally from California, but for us to go in and tell every Texan that they're going to have to change their lifestyle because we know better and we think that this is the right way to do things and the only way to live is fascism, and it's wrong, right? And so I don't like that approach at all. And I don't think that we should try and enforce through penalties and through taxation and through executive orders and mandates people to change their lifestyles because some 90-something-year-old guy who can barely complete a sentence in the White House, it thinks that it's a good idea.
Yeah. But let me allow two thoughts. So the one is you mentioned the battery stuff and so on. I want to keep this away because there are plenty of different technologies will come up also to get the critical stuff out of the batteries. So I want to just stay away from this because it would go too far. But one important stuff, what you mentioned is, and what people always think, in the end, we do not have an energy problem with electric vehicles because this scenario you mentioned would also outline that all people or all cars are connected at the same point of time and getting the full power into the car. So it's more a load problem, and the load problem then also causes the shutdown of power grids and so on. So in the end, it depends on the requirements you have on the speed of charging. And you mentioned, if I have a business trip today, I have a different requirements because I drive there for work. I need to go. I do not have the opportunity to say yes or no. I can have also different point of view on this requirement because I own my own house. I have PV on my rooftop. I can charge my car at home. Okay. I can have a different requirement and say, okay, I live in Texas. I have these long distances. And I need to drive to a high power charging station. Which also raises the question you meant concerning the load in the power grid. But maybe I have the willingness to stop over 300 miles, get an espresso, refresh myself, and plug the car. So that's what I meant before. So the electric car, it's a different kind of use case in the end. When it comes to charging, you cannot compare it, in my opinion, with the classic petrol station. And just to provide a solution on it, maybe because I also see interferences from states critically, we need to really also provide the end user tools like apps, where people can outline and make that requirements transparent, and interact with other people just to make these transparent requirements in a match where we can handle it also from a power grid point of view, because that's a physical limitation, but also having the tool and having this full connection, and I'm talking just only about charging an electric vehicle, I'm not talking about I need to have a car tomorrow to drive to the train station, then I go with the train station to Munich, and I need a small micromobility scooter to go somewhere. I have three different vendors with three different apps. So in the end, we need to bring it also more to the people and the young generation. Everybody, they do not drive cars. Yes, at least the people who coming to our workspace, they come with an electric bike, or you, Florian, mentioned. Yeah, they do not have the need to have a car at all. But in the end, yeah, for me, it's also impossible to plan a trip like this. Yeah, saying now I need to travel. Also, I'm in Texas. I need to go from A to B, and I need two forms of mobility, and I can book it in one app, and I make it convenient for me. You know, in the end, we are missing those tools, and only those tools can bring it into a more adoptional phase, which would then also go away from state interference, in my opinion. That's why I'm completely on your side.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we can agree. I think providing people with options um is the right approach, right? Overall, I think giving people the ability to choose what they want, and then allowing that market and the strength of that market to grow on its own, right? It's kind of like, with children or with plants or with your pets or any kind of animal, right? They're for them to get to their optimum state of health, right? Then or to achieve their potential, there's certain guidance and guidelines that we can give, but ultimately they need to choose,
Yeah.
and they need to struggle, and they need to find solutions for things in creative ways. The economy and the market is no different. The more interference, the worse off we are. The more options that we can give and provide in different kinds of things, I think is good. I think I like I said, I have so much fun riding on my e-motorcycle that I built. And I've built other systems and different things. I've got a trailer that I've built that is all off grid. I love to work with my hands. I love to weld. I've got a battery bank system and solar power. So very like intimately familiar with how those things work, and have a lot of experience in leveraging them and using them. I think if we ignore the whole, blood batteries, I guess you could call them, from where those things are produced, and assume that society is going to continue to pursue nickel as opposed to cobalt and all of these other things. I think the one flaw in the use case, I think, that most people are using, or that you're using in this example, is the flaw in the environmental impact. If sustainability is the name of the game, is the environmental impact, at least currently, between producing an EV vehicle versus producing an ICE vehicle, and the amount of usage required in order for that EV vehicle to have an impact from a carbon footprint or a greenhouse gas emission reduction perspective. So it costs, and there's plenty of data out there to cite. You could probably chat GPT it, and it'll probably tell you, the carbon greenhouse gas emissions between an ICE vehicle to manufacture one versus an EV vehicle in current environment. Now, I am all for, and I hope they figure out a way to do this to where it's much more efficient, but you're talking about a 30, I think, to 40% delta between the emission, or excuse me, the manufacturing process in an ICE vehicle, ICE standing for internal combustion engine vehicle, versus an EV. EV is much more so to produce. However, once you drive, I don't know what this exactly is in kilometers.
Yeah.
12,000 or so miles. So what is that, like 20,000 kilometers or something like that? It offsets to where the EV vehicle is much better from a carbon emissions perspective. The billions of carbon emissions that are emitted every year, EV vehicle is way better. Awesome, great. However, what about the recycling aspects and elements of the batteries? Extremely difficult, extremely time consuming. That's another factor that isn't really considered when people talk about the switch of essentially having EV graveyards all over the earth. Difficulty because of the difficulties associated with recycling batteries and those kinds of things versus vehicles. There's a huge delta there. But if I lived in a city, how long would it take for me to drive 12,000 miles or 20,000 kilometers if I was using an EV vehicle? It'd take a long time, right? In places like Texas, it'd probably only take 1 year. But in places like California in the city, or in Munich in the city, 3 years, 5 years, how long is it taking for it to offset, right? The delta between the two. So until the technology around EV vehicles, both from a manufacturing process, so we aren't killing children in Africa, to the consumption of the manufacturing process and consumption of, or the environmental impact of those, the environmental impact of the recycling, and the amount of time and or mileage or usage that it takes to offset it. To me, it still doesn't make sense from a mass production perspective. I think there's very specific use cases where it does make a ton of sense. And I love the smaller battery concept of things like motorcycles and what have you, because the weight ratio is very different, right? My e-moto I built weighs 120 pounds. That's it, right? I could throw that thing around all day long, versus an EV vehicle, which can weigh, again, 30 to 40% more than a standard sedan because of the weight, because of all of these other things. The technology needs to get better before we really push it, right? In my view. So the incentive from a governmental standpoint should be around innovation around the technology and the manufacturing process, not around penalizing people still for driving ICE vehicles.
I need to interrupt because we are running out of time, but because we said alternative transportation, we briefly touched on it, and I just wanted to comment on what you just said. I had one of the very first mountain bikes as an e-bicycle, and it was really like a clumsy one. So it was like really, they attached a motor and they attached a battery to a standard mountain bike. And if you look right out there, so in Germany, these e-pedelecs, so these e-bicycles are hugely famous. I would say nearly 80% of the bicycles out there are now electric bikes. And the bike that I have right now, compared to the very first one I had, it's very sleek. So the whole battery is in the frame. They're cool. Suspension that is made for the higher weight. So the innovation and the need and the requests from the customers was pushing innovation, was pushing new technologies to accommodate that, to make it fit better. I drive an e-vehicle myself, and again, the base model is a combustion car. They rip the motor out and put in the battery into the ground and so on. But then, of course, we have now new generations coming up with more innovation, better technology, that it fits better, a better weight ratio, and so on. So, of course, I just want to make that comment that, of course, the demand is creating a market that actually then the car manufacturers, hopefully, and others like jumping on and creating new stuff that is being pushed. Look at the first phones, right? The first mobile phones from Nokia compared to the phones that we have right now. One last question to both of you. I would love to have talked with you in more detail, but we have, of course, alternative ways like hybrid cars. And it seems like, from what I heard from both of you, like getting people to get familiarized with the concept of electric driving, and as well the comfort and maybe the range, or the bridging distances, like in Texas, like with hybrid. The same goes for e-fuels, hydrogen that can convert and can create fuels that are not based on oil, for example. Very short, please, just one sentence. Sebastian, I will start with you. What is your opinion on that?
I think hydrogen will be the perfect solution for industrial processes. And I think hydrogen will have a big place there, at least when it comes to production of aluminum, steel, and so on. That's my opinion. And yes, that's it. One sentence.
Very good. Yeah. John.
Yeah, I don't think hydrogen is ready yet. We haven't figured out the chemical process to both store and extract enough energy out of it to make it feasible. However, I'm also hopeful that that's something that we can do in the future. I love the options, right? I love the exploration and the innovation of different ways to approach a real challenge, which is to reduce the overall greenhouse gases. The part of sustainability that I fully believe in is, we know, generally speaking, as people on this planet, as a species, the kind of impact that we're having environmentally, right? And I love the concept of trying to be good stewards and to reduce the amount of our impact on the planet to preserve it for future generations. What I don't like, if you haven't picked it up in this thread yet, is us trying to force things down based upon what some globalist type of organization or entity believes is going to be the best for everyone. I think that if we can focus on these alternative options for energy, more efficient ICE vehicles, pursue hydrogen, pursue EV, pursue all of these other innovative ways, that the market will find a way and will ultimately align to what best supports it for growth for current state as well as future generations. So, I love it. I think it's fantastic. I just don't like the interference, and I generally feel that I don't think government understands what really is in our best interest. I don't trust them. I don't believe politicians.
Thank you for this very long sentence, John.
I'm pretty long-winded if you have it.
And with that, so first of all, thank you to both of you. And no matter if you are on the pro or the con camp here, but first of all, thanks to both of you for this discussion. I feel like we could have gone on for at least another hour, but we had to make a cut now and we do it here. So thank you very much.
Fair enough.
It was a pleasure to have this new format with both of you. SchlauBurger Show, The Clash. Thank you very much.
Thank you for being invited. Bye. Have a nice day.
Yes, thank you. Appreciate it.